I'll be beginning. As I was saying, members of the press, we apologize sincerely. I believe there was a technical problem and we lost connection. But we are back, I believe we are back on track now. So I wanted to reinforce the point that we are in a situation where we face several national issues that are crippling Trinidad and Tobago. Clearly crime, economy, education, health, youth unemployment. We are facing those problems now. And the United National Congress just recently, a few months ago, fought a local government election where the United National Congress was able to obtain 40,000 votes more than the People's National Movement. And I'll give you the figures again. The UNC received 174,000 votes, the PNM 130,000 votes. That is almost more or less 34,000 votes more. Our alliance partner received 16,000 votes. Together, the UNC and the NTA received 190,000 votes. Now that made the PNM very desperate. They are desperate now because the UNC contested less seats. We contested 110 seats. The PNM 141 seats. So imagine we contested what could be 30 seats less, 31 seats less, and we got over 40,000 votes more than the PNM. They are desperate, and the PNM has a history of seeking to infiltrate and undermine and destabilize the United National Congress. And we may be seeing signs of this today. This is the work, I put it to you, of the PNM infiltrating, seeking to destabilize, seeking to undermine the UNC that is clearly ahead in terms of the electoral support. The local government election, the data from the EBC itself supports that view. And therefore, we must be on guard. We must be on guard when certain members of our own party jump up in the public space to have a press conference on what really is a non-issue. The internal elections of this party is due in June, early July, and so. There has been no discussion or decision to postpone that elections. Why do you call a press conference which will undermine, will destabilize our movement, our surge forward in terms of dealing with the PNM? Today, this country, everyone is concerned with removing the PNM and Rowley. They are concerned with what they call the hardcore election, meaning the general election. When you walk on the ground, you go in the market, you go in the mall, you go on the street, you talk to people at the barber shop. Nobody asks you anything about the internal elections in the UNC. They ask you, what are you doing to remove Keith Rowley and the PNM? And therefore, we must be on guard that the PNM can be working here behind the scenes to infiltrate, to destabilize, to undermine. When I hear the colleague from Mayaro saying he has UNC MPs secretly supporting him, this is wild, this is reckless, this is frightening. In fact, if UNC MPs secretly supporting him, that is frightening. But if they are not secretly supporting him and he believes that, that is more frightening. That means he may be delusional if he believes that type of thing. So the member from Mayaro last Friday, in cricketing terms, as you know, the IPL started again, he came down the wicket, make a whoop. When he realized it was a short ball, a fierce bouncer coming to him, he ducked and scampered back in the crease. But we don't have time for games. Politics, elections are serious business. This is not a time to play the fool. This is not a time for gamesmanship and so on. This is not a time for whooping. This is a time for real serious batting. And I want to appeal to my colleagues, be careful. The PNM will use you and abuse you. I want to remind colleagues who were involved in that press conference, the last time the PNM sought to buy out a UNC officer, they gave him a bounce check. They gave him a bounce check, seeking to buy him out. And we have information, we are told, credible information, that one or two members, MP members of the UNC in the lower house have been having meetings with PNM operatives and businessmen linked to the PNM. And what are these meetings about if not to undermine the UNC? if not to allow the PNM to finance individuals in the parliamentary caucus of the UNC to undermine the very UNC. And when you come in the public domain, raise internal matters like this, you are seeking to undermine and destabilize on behalf of the PNM. The PNM has their back to the walls. Nobody wants to hear them. Last night they had a sprinkling of people, which really are state board appointees and so on, and MPs attending their conversation or buff up with the Prime Minister. That is what they had. Nobody wants to hear them. But because they face this crisis now, they seek to undermine the powerful opposition that has 19 seats in Parliament. 19. 21 needed. Has 19. Got the majority of votes. Huge majority by over 40,000 in the last local government elections. And I am telling my colleagues, be careful of the PNM. That creature you ought not to play games. Don't play footsie with the PNM. They will devour you. Don't play games with them. So, and I'm making the point again that colleagues of mine, there's another colleague who went on the TV, I think last week, the member for a constituency and South, and she didn't know whether she going left or right, couldn't say, you know, they were vague and ambiguous in terms of their presentation and what they stand for. Now is not a time for pussyfooting. Now is a time to be very clear. Now is a time for hard work. In 2023, the United National Congress ended that year, 2023 last year, ahead of the PNM by all markers. Just when we are ahead, the PNM seeks to infiltrate. This is their modus operandi, and we must be very careful on that. So we want to congratulate the political leader for this very strong stance on this matter, and to reinforce that our colleague from Mayaro had 2 opportunities to meet and discuss this matter behind closed doors. Ran away from that, and then appears in a press conference by himself with 2 fellows at the head table. One, a former chairman who were feeling bad he didn't get back the chairmanship. The next one who was dragging a coffin up and down the place. We cannot allow this type of nonsense to prevail, and therefore we must take serious action. We are also being informed, brothers and sisters, that this Mickey Mouse Club business, they are calling people, supporters of ours, the spouse, the wives of our activists and officers, and bullying them into support. We will not tolerate bullying in the school system. We will not tolerate bullying at the place of work, and we will not tolerate that in the United National Congress. We're very clear. Don't do that. If you want people to support you, you raise your issues and think when the time comes. And I want to make the very point. I am a person who contested a position of leader in the United National Congress. I did. I'm now a deputy political leader. The first day I made an announcement, I was very clear on what I was doing. I called a press conference and announced only when an election was called. I never announced before. I never campaigned that way before. I did not want to undermine the party, destabilize the party. When an election is called, all members of our party, by virtue of being a member, you are free to put down your name, to align yourself with like-minded persons, form a slate if you may, and contest. Nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with that. But months before this is due, you are coming in the public domain to say, we have no election, we're postponing election. Who told you that? Who told you that? That you would wish to undermine this way? That is the work of the People's National Movement. I have seen the fingerprints of PNM operatives on this matter. And I warn colleagues, be very careful with that. It's a matter I will return to on our next platform as well. But brothers and sisters, as I said before, this is a morning when we have to reflect as well on some of the issues facing the country. We have to reflect on some of the matters that are crippling the country. And one key matter, of course, is national security and crime. Last evening, the Prime Minister made a statement. He said he had intelligence in 2020 that, what was the figure he called a figure? 64,000 illegal weapons came in the country. You know 64,000 illegal weapons came in the country, but you cannot seize not even 4,000 out of the 64. You have all of that information, but yet you will not strengthen border control. You will not purchase a scanner. In 4 years, they cannot purchase a scanner for the Port of Spain. When we bought mobile scanners, the police commissioner, I believe, Mr. Griffith, bought 2 mobile scanners to operate along the roadway and so on. They mash it up. They said they can't use it. When countries all over the world, the Mexico-American border, in Europe, a big continent, they use mobile scanners at border points and so on. Trinidad and Tobago said they can't use it. They don't have the human resource. They don't have the technical capacity. That was the excuse they gave. So, Dr. Rowley, you are talking about how much guns you know illegal, but your campaign, Rowley's campaign, has been to get legal firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. That is his campaign. He's concerned not with illegal firearms. He's concerned with legal firearms. And that is the war they have launched in Trinidad and Tobago. And the Prime Minister also made some statements. He says to people, name one corrupt action of the government and who is corrupt and so on. I want to tell Rowley, I will just name one this morning. We have plenty. I'll name one. That disaster, macabre, bizarre development involving Vincent Nelson from England, an attorney at law, in a matter that sought to arrest and try and jail the former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan and others. That matter is one of the most corrupt bombshell that ever hit this country. That involves undermining the rule of law, perverting the course of justice. That was where there was an attempt to buy off an individual to fabricate and lie on former government office holders, to send them to jail. That is a matter of deep corruption. In any serious country, the police will have already arrested persons like that. We have read in public documents where a senior government minister was on a flight, an aeroplane, and approached Mr. Nelson to tell him, don't worry, everything will be okay. You continue to give statements against UNC ministers. That is a serious matter. So I just raised that one with you in case you're looking for others. In case you're looking for others, I raised that. Last night, the Prime Minister raised the issue of property tax. They are paranoid on this property tax. I don't know why and how. Both Minister Imbert and the Prime Minister on property tax. You know, we ran this country for 5 years. Built 100 schools, 9 police stations, about 3 hospitals. I can go on and go on. Highway, roadways, tertiary education centers, houses. I forgot houses. We gave out 100 homes per week, built 7,000 homes, and never introduced one new tax. We waived the property tax. We gave out laptops to the children every single year, SCA children going on to secondary school. Free laptops. We did not introduce one new tax. We waived the property tax. They come to say the only way they could finance anything. Look, if they have to buy a lace for the shoes, they need property tax. If the government decided, toilet paper ran out in the ministry, we need property tax. That is what they have become. Everything. And we did it without any new taxes, waiving property tax. Now they want to spend more money on propaganda for election. They are now going to spend millions of dollars to, quote unquote, educate the population on property tax. That is not educating the population. What they will do is they will siphon money from the Treasury into the hands of communications agencies to work for the PNM in the general election. That is what they are about. That is what they are about. Look at what has happened. $60 million spent already on the property tax. Advertisement, ads, newspaper, consultation. $60 million spent. And when the time came to collect, they collected $1 million, changed the law, and had to return the $1 million. Had to return the money to people who paid, the few people who paid the property tax. So those are some of the issues, brothers and sisters, that I raised in terms of the Prime Minister's statement last evening. He really had nothing much to add again. But a serious matter, another very serious matter attracting our attention is, of course, this matter involving the intelligence agencies. The intelligence agencies. And there is a powerful headline in a newspaper that we saw, I believe, Tuesday, yesterday. And the Trinidad Guardian had the headline, Spy Twist, as probe into SSA fiasco continues. Spy twist. This is a very serious matter. The bedrock of all crime fighting, the bedrock of all crime fighting has to do with intelligence. The police depends on intelligence upon which to conduct investigations, upon which to gather information that they can turn into evidence that can be put before court to convict wrongdoers, persons accused of criminal offenses. So if the intelligence community collapses on us, crime fighting collapses, because police depend on intelligence. This is how they conduct their business. When they collect intelligence, they then take intelligence and seek to turn it into evidence against wrongdoers, whether it is fraud, whether it is white-collar crime, whether it is gang violence, serious crimes, larceny, and so on. You need intelligence. Today, the SSA has collapsed under the weight of corruption, political mismanagement, waste. The SSA has what is familiarly called a secret budget. The SSA runs a secret budget to buy equipment, to undertake spying, surveillance on persons. They have been doing that for years. Rowley has been managing the State National Security Council for 8.5 years, I believe. And today we are told that the SSA has collapsed on us. How has it collapsed? They themselves hired persons, not the UNC. When we hired one person by the name of, what was the girl name? Some Ramnarayan or something. When we hired one person, the girl probably stayed 4 hours at her desk, was fired. I don't think she collected a cent from the Treasury. They made that an election campaign. They took that to the United Nations. They took that to Mars. All the other planets in the universe knew of that Ramnarayan girl. After 4 hours, she stayed in the job, went to Parliament and threw her out quickly. Today, their entire intelligence community has collapsed. They hired people. They hired, not us, people who they now claim were involved in criminal conduct. They now claim that the people they hired were involved in criminal conduct. And because of that, they have caused now investigations and audits and firing and suspension and talking in the public space now. You hear of assassinations of people and so on. Well, I have something to say about that. I have something to say about that. You see, that story I just made reference to has a very serious matter assigned to it. In the police service, we have the matter of intelligence, where traditionally the police depends on the SSA, Strategic Services Agency, for intelligence. So if the police is undertaking homicide, let's say homicide, and they have information from the ground that Mr. John Smith, John Doe as the case may be, was a man involved in a homicide. They then go to the court, the police, they get a court order and so on, and they can intercept communications, they can put surveillance and so on. But they depend on the SSA, which according to the law, Interception of Communications Act, passed by the People's Partnership, allowed for you to conduct interception of communication. Do you know what has happened? They established a unit, and I have for good measure, I have the departmental order, number 1, part 1, police orders by Commissioner of Police, February 3rd, January 2020, it is dated. This is the order that established the Research and Analytical Unit in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I have a copy of it here. This is the order. But brothers and sisters of the press, I will just make the point in passing that while this order establishes the Research Analytical Unit called RAU, it was established in January 2020. It was the departmental order is dated January 2020. It was established on the 5th of March 2018 when the Commissioner of Police was then Mr. Stephen Williams. It was established. Now, I know it is, I don't want to be too long on it, but I must read certain excerpts of this to tell you what the Research Analytical Unit was meant to be, what it was established to do. It was established in March by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be located at Police Administration Building, and they give the address. It would be responsible for mobile forensic extractions and analysis, CCTV surveillance, retrieval and analysis and data mining, employment of structural analytical techniques, surveillance, tactical analysis, strategic analysis, signal intelligence, human intelligence, open source intelligence, geospatial intelligence, social media intelligence, international relations, counterintelligence. The objective was to establish this unit to deal with detecting, deterring, and disrupting criminal and terrorist activities. Additionally, this unit was to work and function with all units in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So it would deal with homicides, organized criminal networks, illegal drugs, firearm trafficking, human trafficking, kidnapping, missing persons, crimes involving mobile devices, terrorist networks. They had analytical responsibility for information derived from field intelligence and so on. It goes on, this matter, the general mandate, the core mandate, provide key support to all divisions, sections, branches, units within the TTPS, external law enforcement agencies, government departments of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And they set out the structure for it. It was a Class 1 specialist section in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And then they gave a structure, administrative structure, head research analytical unit, head administration, etc., etc. No need. A total of 64 persons in the unit. So we have here in our hands, we are in the opposition, by the way, just to remind you. And we have here the departmental order from the TTPS that establishes the research and analytical unit. Mr. Fitzgerald Hines now, the Minister of National Security, in answering a question on the Parliament yesterday, in answering a question when he was asked, are you aware of the research and analytical unit has specialized equipment capable of conducting surveillance in the form of CCTV cameras and intercepting private communications? He replied, I'm reading from Hansard, I am not aware of that. Now, was this man, you have heard of sleepwalking, but this must be sleep talking. Was he, the Minister of National Security, is saying in the Hansard, he is not aware that the police have a unit with 64 people to deal with this matter. He's not aware of that. That is sleep talking or blatantly telling an untruth. I don't know. I don't know. But what makes matters even worse, and I want to put it to Mr. Hines today, we have intelligence that suggests to us that the RAU is located within a branch called Special Branch. Everyone in the sector knows, in security, Special Branch reports to the Prime Minister. From the days of Eric Williams, the head of Special Branch will go every morning to see Dr. Williams, to give him a report on what is happening in the realm. If somebody bad talk Eric Williams somewhere in Beach, the Special Branch will give Dr. Williams a report in the morning. They report to the Prime Minister. They report to the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security. And now the RAU under Special Branch is undertaking interception of communications, is undertaking surveillance, is undertaking work, and they have in their possession equipment which we believe are more sophisticated, more technologically advanced than the equipment of the SSA. And that was the conflict between the SSA and the RAU. Minister says he knows nothing about that. But this morning I want to put it to the Minister. Minister, you know about that. You know about that. You must know about that because, Minister, we are informed that this very Minister, Fitzgerald Hines, placed a call on behalf of one Brent Clement, and that call was on speakerphone, talking to an operative, one person in the leadership of the SSA, in which the very minister, I'm asking the minister this question, did you place a call to a senior official in the SSA on behalf of one Brent Clement? Did you ask the SSA to ensure that Mr. Clement got a feed of a particular technology? Did you also insist that the RAU should have intercept capability, just like the SSA? And did you not act on behalf of the head of the RAU to ensure that certain feeds, call feeds, that is monitoring devices and monitoring data and so on, would be moved from SSA to RAU? That was what we are told, and we asked the minister to clarify a conversation between himself and a high-ranking operative in the SSA, where he was making recommendations on behalf of one Mr. Clement to ensure that he gets a particular technology available to him, and he has intercept capability. Now, this is a very important matter, because when they are in control of intelligence and surveillance equipment, devices, and technology, they then use that to monitor their political opponents and to monitor anyone in the national community who speak out. So today it could be political opposition. Tomorrow it is the trade unions, it is the youth movement, the women's movement, the businessmen who are speaking out. Who knows, they may have intercepted the communication of Mr. Ronald Harford. This is why they stand in Parliament and speak about him and what he's saying publicly and what he may be thinking privately. I remind the national community, when we came in 2010, in The Guardian, I believe there's also an editorial, I believe it's today, if I'm not mistaken, Guardian editorial of Wednesday, March 27, today, accountability for spy agencies. It says clearly here that the government must account for the intelligence work by spy agencies. Now that we have not one, but we have two. We have two. Brothers and sisters of the media, Mr. Hines must be called to account for his interaction with the SSA on behalf of the RAU, and to tell the country why the political directorate must commandeer, must command, must direct the work of the research and analytical unit out of special branch. And I am told that when there was an attempt by a former commissioner to move that unit from special branch to what is called the cyber unit, there was a ferocious backlash from the politicians. They did not want the unit to move to cybercrime because then they would have no control. They would not be able to do their dirty work if that unit moved. A related matter, and I want to bring new matters to the attention of so when I see this headline, Hines claims he's unaware of any spy unit in TTPS. But this is madness. Even without calling the operative in the SSA to ask about transferring technology to the RAU, as Minister of National Security, you are in charge of the police. You have not the administrative responsibility, but it falls under Ministry of National Security. So clearly, if you are Minister of National Security, you should have on your desk the list of all the departments and units in the TTPS. Because how are you making policy? How is Hines making policy for national security if he doesn't even know what exists in the police service? So is it a lie? Or why did you lie in the parliament? Or you just don't know? These are some of the important questions. And brothers and sisters, one more related matter I want to raise in relation to the spying. And a very important matter at that. Now, the country witnessed on one macabre weekend a 10 o'clock meeting of the cabinet in Trinidad and Tobago on Saturday night. A Saturday night, 10 o'clock, midnight decision of the cabinet. We have not asked in the parliament, but I think a question is being filed, to tell us the time of the cabinet meeting, date and time, when they took the decision to send Mr. Bess on administrative leave. It was a Saturday night, 10 o'clock. By 4 a.m. Sunday morning, the police surrounded the building, the headquarters of the SSA. Now, what drives action like that? A cabinet can meet every week if they want to fire somebody, they want to hire somebody. Every Thursday morning you could do that if you want. You don't have to meet Saturday night to do that. Why? It has also come to our attention that there's a serious issue arise from that matter. The government has undermined the intelligence establishment in Trinidad and Tobago with dire consequences, not only for national security in Trinidad and Tobago, but could I tell you, there are consequences for national security in the United States of America and the region. Why we say this? Most people would have read and heard of an operative from the SSA who was killed, who was murdered on the highway sometime in November last year. That person, we are told, undertook work for the SSA, including installation of CCTV cameras. So imagine a man is installing CCTV cameras and managing an administration system for that. When people come to your house to put camera in your house, also know that they could also macro your house. Because they will have access to your password, your code, your key device, and so on. If it is linked to burglar alarm system, they can lock off your alarm. We are told that one character involved here actually put a CCTV camera burglar system alarm in a place and then gone to America and lock it off. So you can't go in the building because they can't access through your key code and the cameras are off or on and he is watching, spying, macroing. Now we are asking us two important questions. That operative that was installing CCTV cameras for SSA, did they also install CCTV cameras for two senior cabinet ministers in this country in their personal residence, in their private residence? This is where it gets frightening, that the same person who is installing cameras for SSA, who has the power to see through anywhere in the world, can log in and get your password and encryption and so on and watch these cameras, were also involved in installing CCTV cameras in the private residence of cabinet ministers. They probably get it cheap or free or something and they're going with that. Now we have a more bizarre development. We are told that that person who was installing CCTV cameras also had some link, whether directly, whether indirectly, whether by salary, by wage, by payment, to elements in Trinidad and Tobago that has been deemed to have a link with an international terrorist group. And that is why it can explain this emergency Saturday night 10 o'clock meeting when the Prime Minister came back hours before from the United States of America, where we were told that he met officials of the CIA. So you meet officials of the CIA, you come back from America meeting the CIA, 10 o'clock Saturday night a meeting, 4 o'clock surround the building with police. And now we are collecting information that the person had some link to known persons in Trinidad and Tobago who themselves were either involved or alleged to be involved in financing international terrorism. That is where Rowley has taken this country. That they put in the state security sector persons who are alleged to have links with the financing of terrorism. Years ago, you all recall in Parliament, I spoke about the fighters going to the Middle East, the ISIS fighters. We had a big struggle with that. They said we were reckless and it was not 200, it was 125, then 118. There are stories in the press on that. But also at that time, recall that the security agencies had information on persons who they allege to be financing that group. And today I call upon Dr. Rowley, you have to come and clear the air. You have to speak on this matter. Whether under your watch an international terrorist organization undermined the security establishment and the intelligence community in Trinidad and Tobago and put the entire country, possibly the region, as a hostage to international terrorism. And is that the reason why you had to act like that? Is that the reason? We asked that question and put it on the table. Because we have to explain why there was a 10 o'clock Saturday night cabinet meeting. Why 4 o'clock you surround the building? What was it that you couldn't wait for Thursday to do? To send Mr. Roger Best on holiday? You could have done that Thursday morning at cabinet. But we suspect there is something deeper here. And the Prime Minister is hiding. They said last night when they asked him about SSA, he choked up and said, I cannot say no more, I cannot say more. What could you not say that your government undermined the national security of the hemisphere? You undermine the intelligence community in Trinidad and Tobago by hiring persons who then you discover involved in criminal misconduct or has links to terrorist international groups. And then they only want to raise some girl who the partnership hired for 4 hours, as if that made some difference in the world. So I leave this there as well. And the one issue again I will raise is an issue I raised in the Parliament last week Friday, I believe it was. Last week Friday. And that involves a matter with what is called the Ministry of Health headquarters. There's a simple matter to understand, but it's a very serious matter to confront. You see, the Ministry of Health embarked upon building a headquarters. They built a headquarters around Queen's Park East, Jerningham Junction Avenue. Gave it to a contractor. A contractor won the bid, meaning that he had the lowest bid, presumably. We haven't seen that data yet. And in a sort of strange way, and I use the word strange, in a strange deal, UDCOT, and I want to remind you all, UDCOT is under the office of the Prime Minister. That is where UDCOT is. It is not where it was before. Under the office of the Prime Minister, UDCOT gives a contract to a company named Acelfius Holdings Limited, incorporated in 2019. So a company incorporated in 2019, we have all the company documents and so on here, got a contract with UDCOT to construct the Ministry of Health building. But that was not the company that bid for it or won it. That is linked to another company that presumably got the award. And in this matter, it was very clear from the, Ms. Julian John understand these things, built own lease transfer model. This is a UDCOT request for proposal. It's a very large document, I have a few pages. You know what they say here? And I'm just reading page 25. The contractor, who is called the preferred proponent, shall make its own financial arrangements to secure financing for the design and construction of the works, subject to terms and conditions included in the tender, and so on. The employer shall not be responsible for directly making any arrangements and so on with the contractor. It says here as well that the contractor, here this one, if UDCOT in its sole discretion determines that the proponent is unlikely to obtain financing, it may in its sole discretion reject the proponent's proposal. UDCOT will review the financial plan of the bidder to establish the strong likelihood, if selected, that this bidder can arrange all financing required for the development of the project. In a nutshell, what they're saying with big words here is that when you come to a bill-own lease transfer model, you build, you own, you lease back to the government, and then you transfer after some years. But you get your own financing. And the Prime Minister on every platform, the private sector has money. We have to use that for development. PPP, that's how they're talking, 8 years now, PPP. You know what happened here? They went, gave a bidder a contract to build the Ministry of Health. And the bidder presumably couldn't find money. They then took the parcel of land around the Queen's Park, the parcel of land it built on. We have all the documents here. And leased this land to the Commissioner of State Lands to a company so that that company could use it as equity to get a loan to build the building. So at the end of the day, the successful proponent, he didn't take 10 cents from his pocket. Not 10 cents for the project. You took prime state land, gave it to a company, a holding company, said go to the bank and get a loan and use that loan to build the building. So that defeats the purpose of all the requests for proposal. Mr. Noel Garcia responded to me, and of course he behaves and speaks with the same hograntish attitude of his master, telling me I can't do maths and things. I want to tell Mr. Garcia, I don't want to tell you how long I spent in university, but it was a long time. But forget university training. I have a 1 in ordinary level maths. You can start there. I have a 1. And Mr. Garcia, you cannot put a proposal that a proponent successful will finance itself and you give them land. And I asked, did you tell the other contractors who were bidding that they also get in land? When they bid knowing that I have to go to the bank, I have to raise my money. It will be in phases, of course. But you gave a company land. Explain that. Now, Mr. Garcia cannot explain that. He said, that's usual. He said, that's a usual course of action. Okay, name the other few examples that you did this with. Name it. Name it. That is what we asked. And there's another matter related to that. They told us in the public space that the building is $260 million. 260 more or less $1 billion. But the project manager for that building was Aleron, a company named Aleron Limited. This is off their website. So what I read now is off a website. This is not a private business or anything. They say here, and I quote, February 19, 2024, on Monday, August 7th, 2023, the Prime Minister, give a long name and so on, opened the state-of-the-art Ministry of Health Administrative Building located at Port of Spain, and they give the address and so on. Here it is. The lease will run for 15 years at a cost to the government of $30 million per annum. So the government of Trinidad and Tobago that gave the land paying $30 million for 15 years. You multiply 30 million by 15, you get 450, correct? So the government, the taxpayer, is paying $450 million over 15 years for a building that they told us the building is $260 million. Now, what madness is this? Where the $190 million gone? What is that for? That can be interest. Interest would be maximum 6% would be $18 million or so. So, where the money gone? Why do we need to spend $450 million on a building you say is $260 million? Why? Why did you give land? You say, well, that is usual. The person didn't have the company didn't have equity, didn't have collateral, they can't raise money. So you give away the land for 50. No, the land may be for longer. It's 15 years, the taxpayer will pay 30 million. So they come now with this thing, they don't want to rent, they want to build government building, but they're giving land to private organizations, private entities to hold, to get money from the bank. That is their approach. Mr. Garcia say all of that is fine, we don't have no problem with that, they're doing that. I want to ask Mr. Garcia, tell us for the record, how much money did the administrative building cost? How much money did it cost? And how much money are we paying for it? And if that difference of 190 million is there, why? Where the money gone? Is that to build Balize house? Is that for campaigning? Is that somebody's pension and gratuity advanced? Are they collecting money now because they know they need the party launch? So they full in their pocket and stuff in their pocket before they roll out? Those are the questions we are asking, because something smells fishy with this Ministry of Agriculture building. Something smells fishy with that, and we raise this matter. Mr. Garcia is one to insult and crass behavior and so on, as I said before. But just two questions we asked him. Just two. Name the other projects in which you give land away as equity. And secondly, what is the cost of the building and how much is the taxpayer paying over 15 years for this building? So, brothers and sisters, those are some of the few questions that and issues I wish to raise. The country is in a very dire strait, and with good measure, the Prime Minister announced that he's leaving for a well-deserved vacation in a couple of days. I want to tell the Prime Minister, you don't have to tell nobody not to destroy this country. There's nothing else to destroy. There's nothing else to destroy, so you don't have to tell people not to destroy the country. You have done it yourself. You have done a good job of destroying Trinidad and Tobago. I will leave it there unless there are some questions and so on that we will wish answered.
Yeah, thank you. Do I use the words? That's good. Yeah. All right, yeah. Rashad Khan, Newsday. Mr. Moonilal, let's start at the beginning when you addressed Mr. Parry. You said that the party is hoping to put forth a strong and united front in the general election in 2025, but you also further down stated that there are MPs who, you have reliable information, are meeting and engaging in discussions with the PNM, as well as maybe business owners or anything like that affiliated to the PNM as part of their way of infiltrating the party. Now, two questions on that point. Firstly, how is this putting forward a strong and united front for the next election if this is going on? And secondly, are there any intentions to clean up house ahead of that election?
Well, second question first, so to speak. Clearly, the party will undertake in due course a process of screening candidates. We had absolutely no idea, for example, that Mr. Parry was a member of the PNM and was indeed not only a member, but admittedly, Mr. Parry himself, I think, admitted that he was a financier of the PNM. When Mr. Pandey went for screening in 2020, there was no idea that he was PNM party member 76050, was deemed to be a financier of the PNM as well. And while that was shocking to many of us, in the coming months when we undertake screening and so on, there will be a much more rigorous process to ensure that persons may not be jumping from the PNM to the UNC, because let's face it, everybody wants to join the UNC. The results of local government election tell you one thing is clear: everybody wants to come. Everybody wants to join. Whether they want to join as third party, third person, whatever, everybody, you know, I would say everybody loves Raymond, everybody loves the UNC at this minute. So everybody wants to join. So the problem is we have to have a very strenuous screening process and create a harmonious team of persons who we believe are extremely committed, dedicated, capable of hard work. Governing this country is extremely difficult, and it demands enormous work. So that is what we will do in the future to ensure that we have harmony with that type of team. In terms of meeting with the PNM, as I said, those of us who have been around a longer time know that the PNM has been prone to that, to meeting and treating with persons in the opposition party. It happened before. I mean, I can call names if you want, but it has happened before, where they seek to undermine the UNC by meeting with persons and so on. I remember in 2001, without calling name, I remember in 2001 when 3 individuals had left the UNC and were, again, challenging the party and so on. I read in the public domain a letter from a PNM minister which said to favor one person in conducting constituency business and so on, you know, because they were against the UNC. The PNM is famous for that. So when I hear, for example, first-hand account that persons in the UNC caucus now met businessmen in San Fernando with great links, not only to Dr. Rowley, but to the other senator, I believe, Mr. Hussein. When I understood that members of the business community with links to the PNM have been meeting, and they are PNM operatives. I mean, that's their job, that's their role. I don't blame anybody. But all I say is to be cautious, because this thing has happened before, and the benefit of any ripples in the water is the People's National Movement. That's the beneficiary. So you cannot be working for the UNC if you're giving a benefit to the PNM. That is all I say. And it's something that I imagine that we will consider at the appropriate time, at the appropriate forum.
Right. Now, in light of Mr. Parry's press conference, there have been 1 or 2 other members of the party who may have, I don't want to say thrown support behind him, but supported to an extent what he was saying. And you spoke about a more rigorous screening process going forward for the party. Will these persons be reselected to contest any seats if they do put their names forward?
Well, I can't preempt or prejudge or prejudice any discussion of the screening committee or ratification by the national executives. I don't want to prejudge that. But as I said, we are in a process now where we have taken note. In fact, I have in my hand here Trinidad Guardian, 20th September 2015. The headline is, I read the headline, Parry expelled from PNM. And this details, you know, the case that he was expelled for transgressing beyond reason in their behavior during election campaign and so on. And he was expelled for being a UNC candidate by the PNM. So was really a live PNM member at that time. So it's something that we have to look at. We expect when persons come to us on the screening committee, they will be open, they will be sincere, they will be honest with their political history. We also explain that. Remember, we can't cross-reference the PNM membership. We don't have their database. So we expect when people come that they will tell us the truth. But having said this, I want to reiterate that the party is on an election footing. Our results in local government gave enormous confidence that the party will win the next general election, and that is why this is happening. In fact, if the party didn't have a chance of winning the general election, this will not happen. This is really a struggle between the PNM and the UNC, and the PNM, you know, their plan is always to infiltrate, undermine. That is their plan. And to distract, because let's face it, when you spend time dealing with these matters before you, ripples, as I say, men coming out and whooping down the wicket, they want to take you away from economy. We haven't spoken about Naikwan this morning. I have a note on matters in the education sector. I have a next note before me here on something with Mr. Randall Mitchell renting a building from himself. I think he's renting from himself. I told him in Parliament I've heard of Al Rental. Now we have Al Randall. So we don't have time this morning to talk about that because I had to spend some time talking about MP from Mayaro. That is the objective of the PNM. That is the objective, to see if they could get away. They see if they could get away by infiltrating the UNC and undermining and destabilizing. But it will not happen. It will not happen at all. And this is why this morning, many persons who contacted me, both on the phone talking and sending notes, were extremely pleased that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa last evening in an interview laid down the law and took strong action and suggested a tone which suggests that we will be disciplined.
One final question for me on this matter.
You don't have any question on any other matter?
We will see how it goes.
You will go see how it goes.
All right, so the NTA has selected Mr. Gary Griffith to go up for the St. Joseph constituency. Is the UNC going to be fielding any candidates for that constituency?
Well, again, Mr. Khan, you are encouraging me to prejudice a process, which I can't, because there's a screening committee. We have invited nominations. They close, I believe, on April 11th. We will, when that time comes, we will cross that bridge. But we are a party that will screen for all seats. Mr. Griffith is within his right to put his name down for any seat. And he runs a political party, so they are within their right. We are within our right to screen. When that time comes, we will cross the bridge whether there is need for any other type of amalgamation or any discussions and so on. But we cannot stop another party from nominating a candidate, and another party cannot stop us from our screening process.
Good day, Doris Polo from CNC3 and Guardian Media. You mentioned Rushton Parry financing the PNM and having not declared that to the party when he was screened. But according to the report that you quoted that was written by the Guardian in 2015, he was a holding PNM party card holder when he in fact went up for the seat of MP for Mayaro when he won for the UNC. So in that vein, why be so shocked that he at one point or the other financed the PNM?
Well, you generally don't screen people who are financiers of another party. I mean, it doesn't work like that. The news of his expulsion, as you will recall with the timeline, came after the general election, correct? So this was not in the public space at all before the general election of, I believe, August 2015. So if you just look at the timeline, you will realize that that expose came after the fact. The gentleman was already, of course, a member of the parliament and elected and so on. And then this came to the fore. But it is only recently, you will recall as well, that the gentleman admitted that he was also involved in financing. That was not an initial issue when he was expelled. He was expelled because he joined another party. He wasn't expelled because he was financing. That came to the fore quite recently when, by his own admission, he admitted that. That is not something that we would have had information on. And when I say accurate information, because in Trinidad, people say things about everybody, but he has admitted that he did that as well. I'm not sure that, finances of one party become candidates of another party that way. So having said that, over the period of time, it is in a way, it's a developmental lesson as well, that you bear in mind these things happen. And particularly, in the case of persons who are involved in one party deeply. As we said before, we are not in a position of taking advice from the PNM. So these are matters we will manage, and we will manage well, and we will confront certain issues in due course. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, considering back in 2009, Mrs. Prasad Bisessa took a position that she too called for a national executive elections when Mr. Pandey was at the helm. She was supported by Winston Gypsy Peters, Ramesh Lawrence Mirage, and Mr. Jack Warner as well. And she also voiced that she did not support Pandey as leader of the party overall. How does that differ? What's the difference between her position then and Rushton Parry's position now in 2024?
Well, there are fundamental differences, and I can tell you because I was there. You may not have been covering politics at the time, but I was there. When there was a call for internal election, it was because the election was postponed. It was postponed several times by the party, and persons went to the public space and called. But it was postponed several times, let's say that. I can't recall offhand whether it was postponed twice, 3 times, 4 times. But what I can tell you, it was postponed. In this case, nothing is postponed. Nothing has been deemed postponed, signal postponed, nothing. Right? There's no postpone, there's no pone, there's nothing. Right? So the matter don't arise that way. Then the other matter is that if you believe that the political leader, whether it's Mr. Pandey, Mrs. Prasad Bisessa, should be replaced or so there should be changed, you wait for an internal election, you put your hat in the ring. If you don't have a hat, you buy a hat and put it in the ring. And you put up yourself and you explain yourself to the membership. That is how decent and mature political parties operate. when an election comes and we know date so-and-so is the election, persons will say, okay, I think I would like to contest, and the reasons are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It don't arise this way, that you bring a Mickey Mouse kind of a press conference to say not to postpone the election, when nobody never postponed no election. That is only to fuel the PNM's flame, you know, to undermine. So the situation 2009-2010 was fundamentally different. I'll tell you a next difference that you may not think of. When the UNC election was held in 2010, January 24th, right, there was no general election in sight. The general election was carded for 2012. After the UNC election, Mr. Manning called what is known as a snap election. So there was no election. In this case, there is an election in sight. In sight, it is 1 year or so away from us. If this is March, August is a time, you could go beyond August constitutionally, but we are within striking distance. There's no, in 2010, right, was really 2 full years, maybe more because it was January. 2 or 3 full years before a general election was due. This is fundamentally different. So I am saying, what is this with the timing? What is this with the timing? Why do you need to tell us hold internal elections when we didn't tell you we're not holding? Why go in the public and do that while you could write a letter to the General Secretary and say, Mr. General Secretary, please remember, I just spoke to 100 people and they told me we must have internal, and I tell you. That's it. In parties we do that. I have written letters to General Secretary, Chairman, Leader over the years, emails, raising issues and so on. That's how we do it. We don't go in the public space and call a press conference in Woodford Square for something. We could send a letter, send a note, send a WhatsApp. Years ago, we didn't have the electronic telecom like this. Today, you could WhatsApp anybody and say, please be reminded that it is my considered view that X and Y and Z should apply. That's all. But you go in the public space, carry people, create this couture unnecessarily, only with the objective of undermining and destabilizing. That could be the only objective. There's no other objective. And I repeat, on 2 occasions, Mrs. Prasad Visesa called the gentleman in the parliament. I am there, I'm the witness. In fact, Mrs. Prasad Visesa called me. One day I left the parliament very briefly to do an errand in Port of Spain. And I got a phone call that there's a meeting, Mrs. Prasad Visesa, Mr. Parry, Dr. Lee, please return. I dropped everything, fly back to the Red House. When I reached the Red House, I said, where's the meeting? What? They said the gentleman was busy, he had something else to do. Albeit during the parliament time, but he was busy. Couldn't meet. But that is how you air your concerns. You don't air your concerns with press conference. Press conference is to raise matters of SSA, property tax, economy, matters that affect our nation as a whole. That is what you raise when you come to press conference. Not a couture ranting in the party that you want to raise and create destabilization. Much more when you're meeting PNM operatives and so on. So it's very transparent, and it's something that I'm hoping that persons, I still think maybe it's a lack of experience in some cases that persons don't know how to manage themselves within political institutions, but that will be it. Yeah.
You mentioned Ms. Anita Haynes pussyfooting, so to speak, when she appeared on our program to speak about MP Parry. But she did say that she does in fact support Mrs. Prasad Visesa as the duly elected leader, while, and Rashad alluded to it, while she still somewhat supported his call for internal elections. What are your concerns that made you consider that position to be pussyfooting?
Why do you think it's not pussyfooting?
I didn't say I didn't.
Oh, yeah, you didn't.
I'm just asking.
From my recollection, I would just say that I believe her statement was very vague and ambiguous on the matter, unlike others. So I'll leave it at that, but I don't want to get too much into this pussyfooting business before I start to. Anything on the SSA by any chance?
That's no. So you just said something there. I have to circle back to it. Just before Doris asked the question there, you mentioned that Parry was one of the MPs at a meeting with PNM operatives. Yeah? Is he one of the MPs that are...
What I can say is we have information that the member from Mayaro has been in touch with operatives of the PNM in the recent past, and their history of the PNM is doing such things. And the PNM needs to take stock because it never worked in the past, so it won't work now. But that is their modus operandi. You will get their fingerprint on this matter. They can be caught out easily with this matter.
Okay, would you be willing to say how many others might be? Or?
No, I have information on one particular incident and case. I have no such information elsewhere, but as soon as I get it, I'll let you know.
All right. So see, as... And I'm speaking in reference to the interview that Ms. Cabinet Officer Lisa Soto had with The Guardian and was published this morning, where she threatened expulsion for Mr. Parry if he does not toe the line. But here now you are saying, and she also mentioned it, that basically him being a past financier of the PNM would have been, had it been known at that point in time, a deal breaker for his nomination being accepted by the party. So therefore, is it that Mr. Parry's days are basically numbered at this point, that there is no point of redemption for him?
My friend, you are asking me as if I'm the Lord and Master here. I cannot determine the end product. I can't determine the expiry date of bread. No politicians. There's a process, and when the process comes, I believe that it's a collective effort and so on, and whatever decision is made is in the best interest of the party and of Trinidad and Tobago. But I will step down from being Lord and Savior, and particularly during this week.
Now, all right, going over to the SSA.
Aha!
You raised some very concerning
Yes.
points about the structure of this organization without any oversight, really, which is what the SSA has as it stands. And you also mentioned, you know, the PNM hiring people and then calling them criminals. What is the UNC going to do besides raising this information in the public domain here at this press conference? Because of course, as journalists, we will do our due diligence. But what is the party going to do based on the information you currently have?
Well, in light of the new information now that has been released in the press as well, I believe I quoted from the article in the Trinidad Guardian, I believe. In light of that type of information and the clear ambiguity of the minister in Parliament yesterday, I believe that we will again write the Joint Select Committee on National Security, but this time with a difference. Last time we wrote the Joint Select Committee on National Security to examine the SSA. But I believe strongly now, given the relationship between the executive and the legislature, that the National Security Council itself, headed by the chairman, should now subject themselves to a parliamentary examination on this matter. And it is not unforeseen, because the Prime Minister himself had appeared before a Joint Select Committee before to answer questions on another matter. And the Prime Minister, head of National Security, should appear along with any other member of the National Security Council before the Joint Select Committee on National Security to answer questions on these serious matters as to whether the security apparatus has been surrendered to terrorist elements, as to whether the research and analytical unit is now a rogue unit operating at the behest of the political directorate. And the equipment they have, there are some serious concerns about the equipment they have, which they procured and which is not in the possession of the SSA. Those questions, I believe, should be answered at a Joint Select Committee by the head of the National Security Council.
Is the UNC prepared to take this externally? Because you did say that it undermines the intelligence of the hemisphere.
Well, when these matters, assuming that you do give it some coverage, apart from my arrow, assuming you do give it some coverage in the papers, I imagine that the international community as well will be alerted and may have certain questions to ask. And we take it from there. But there are other questions to be filed in the Parliament, which we will file, that will seek to expose the operations of the RAU, the conflict that exists between the two intelligence organizations that may have led to the removal of the director. And just bear in mind that Mr. Roger Best is still the director of the SSA. He is still the director. He is on administrative leave. The Act provides that the director of the SSA can authorize interception. I asked in the Parliament, I did not get an answer from Dr. Rowley himself, whether the person he's calling director, acting director, has the authority in law to intercept. We believe that there's a legal issue there. The director has the power. We're not sure the acting director may have that power. Because we remember when the director traveled before, and there's something called a deputy director, and we do not believe the deputy director had that power. The deputy director has administrative control, but we do not believe in the law that that person can intercept. So that places another serious issue. This is an important point. There are ongoing intelligence gathering in the country. All the time it happens. The night of election, the day after election, police continue their work. Intelligence continue. If you are intercepting phone calls and electronic interception computers and so on of persons alleged to be gang leaders, white-collar criminals and so on. That don't stop on election night, you know. It continues. That has to continue because the police are seeking to build a case, to get evidence. What is the status now of all the work that they have been doing before? When you send home the director, fire the deputy director, fire 15 more, gone, and someone is in the office as acting director and we are not sure that he has the power in law to intercept. That is a very serious question. That can undermine the work of the police, the Homicide Investigations Bureau. It could undermine CID. It could undermine every unit, the anti-kidnapping squad. It could undermine the human trafficking unit in the conduct of their work, because you just dismantled, for all intents and purposes, the intelligence gathering agency. And then you have the RAU, which has serious questions to answer as to what they're doing. And I noticed Mr. Hines made an interesting point. I just wanted to wrap it up with this. He says in the parliament, quite interestingly, he says in the law, the commissioner of police has the authority to intercept, to authorize intercept. That's the law. The commissioner of police has the power to authorize intercept. What obtained before is the commissioner of police and the chief of defense staff too, will authorize the interception of communication, and the SSA will do it because they had the technology, the equipment, not the police. Now he's saying that the police commissioner can authorize and do it herself through special branch. But I am not even sure that under the law, the police, the commissioner can delegate, can tell the constable located in a station somewhere, you will authorize that, not me. The commissioner authorize. And I am asking the work the RAU have been doing, can they tell us that all their interceptions, all their surveillance that require to act under the Interception of Communication Act, whether that has been authorized by the Commissioner of Police, Earl Christopher Hale? I want to ask that question. And she must also answer whether she authorized the RAU to conduct interception, because they may be, the RAU today is serving two masters. They are serving the Commissioner of Police and they're serving the Political Directorate.
Another question here. You said that the minister, you quoted that in Parliament he would have said he had no idea.
Yes, I quoted Hansard.
And yet you have evidence to show otherwise.
Yes.
So is there going to be a motion of no confidence against Minister Hines?
Again, I don't want to prejudice what we will discuss in the parliamentary caucus. Motions of no confidence in ministers and so on are matters that we arrive at.
Privilege, yeah, privilege.
Privilege, as you say,
well,
yeah. More privilege, but it can be both. It could be a privilege motion for allegedly lying, or it could be a motion of no confidence for incompetence. So it could be anything. But again, these are collective decisions that are taken by our caucus and the party with the guidance of the political leader. And in due course, I'm sure those issues will arise. Okay? Well, all that is left for me to do is to thank members of the press, our listeners, viewers on the various social media platforms, and to express our best wishes for the Holy Week and the Easter weekend to the Christian community. It's a wonderful weekend that symbolizes and in such a dramatic fashion our multicultural, multi-religious nature, so that we will wish the Christian community all the best for the Holy Week and Easter. The Hindu community celebrates Pagwa, which is a major celebration. We want to wish all a happy Holi, and of course the Shouter Baptist holiday as well upon us, with several matters. And while all of that is happening, our Islamic brothers and sisters are undertaking their fasting and prayer in the holy month of Ramadan. So we have Ramadan, we have the Shouter Baptist, we have the Pagwa, we have the Easter, and we have Trinidad and Tobago. That is the beauty of our country, and we must maintain that diversity and the peace and justice that are required to sustain diversity. Thank you all, and God bless you all.